the same. I guess we forgot to record. Um, so let's continue. So our vendors, when you go into the expenses here, you can go into your vendor center. It looks exactly the same as the customer side and your employee side, which we'll get into later. It has these different tabs where you can get into things. You're able to create a new vendor, new transactions up here. You're able to see how many open purchase orders you have versus the estimates on the customer side. You're able to see how many overdue and open invoices you have and what those total. You're able to see how much has been paid the last few, in the last 30 days or so. Again, you have all your customer information down here that you've included. You can see if they owe you anything, if you owe them anything, sorry. You can also use this little thing here to create bills, schedule some payments, send them a check, etc. So, oh, this is just a screen. We were trying to show that list of stuff that I just talked about. So that little drop down arrow, it has expenses, write checks. You can actually create a purchase order and you can make it inactive on the same vendor center screen. Once you get back and once you click on the vendor, you're going to see the same screen as you do on the customer side. This is just all your information that you want to know about your vendor. A lot of the times it's very convenient to have their emails, their phone number, their address, and their name in here. Just so when you write the checks, everything shows up properly. You don't have to go handwrite any kind of checks, and you can just throw them in an envelope, mails off correctly as long as you have the right stuff. But if you had any, if there was any delivery requirements here or anything you've signed with your vendor, that you may need to have access handy, you can drop it down here again with this attachments. You can also see your transaction list if you click on this one of seeing all the transactions that you've done with your vendor. The cool thing about this screen is it kind of shows everything all at once, shows all your checks, all your expenses, all your credit card charges, any kind of expenses that might have gone through as a debit card charge. You can see those all in one spot versus trying to go back and chase after them. And then it also gives you a good idea of if you have the same vendor and it's always the same category and for some reason you misplaced it, it makes it easy to fix it from here. And it also allows you to have little memos of why was this one, or I don't know why this one would be so low, but if it was for, say $200-300 and you usually spent $25 to $50, you can have yourself a little note to be like, oh, okay, that's why we brought lunch for the whole crew on that day. Same thing from here as well as up here, you can edit the client, the vendor. You can also add a new transaction, which is that same list, expenses, bills, etc. The difference here, I will mention, I keep saying bills, checks, expenses. We're just going to kind of define them a little bit in regards to QuickBooks. The expenses are something that is not a physical check or not a physical bill that you've gotten from your vendor that you have terms on. So any kind of credit card charges, debit card charges, ACHs, any of those things that just automatically go through your credit card or your checking account is known as an expense, and you should probably record them properly that way, because if you can record them as a check, but it just kind of makes your cleanup a little harder to know if that was really a physical check versus just a transaction that went through a card one. Bills are, again, anything that they've given you terms and you're going to pay for at a later date, and checks are just those physical checks that you've written to the vendors. So let's start creating an expense. So you can do that from here. Vendor center, you're going to go into the little drop down arrow here, hit your expense, and then we're going to start entering it. So again, same screen. Which bank account did we use? Did we use a credit card? Did we use their savings account? How did it come out? We're going to put it here. You're going to have your date as well. This is not necessary, but sometimes it's convenient because it makes it nice and easy for you to know, was this a card transaction, a check transaction, etc. Reference numbers, if you have it, you normally don't. So there's nothing there, but sometimes if you get a confirmation number, you can kind of throw it in there, or you can throw it down here on the memo, just so it's easier for you to track if you ever have to contest it. Category again, description if you have it, your amount, again, if it's billable, if it's taxable, and what the customer is. The tax, again, comes up as not automatic, but you can change them on an individual basis. I would say here, somebody last week did ask about wholesaling and how to do products with taxable or not taxable. You can do that here, either through the expense and through the bill. You can put that product and service in here under item details. It's the same type of thing. You just put the item here, put the amount, put that it's billable to your customer. And then on the invoice side that we showed with the billable expenses, you can unmark the tax. And that's the way, that's one of the ways around not paying tax twice. So now we've to input a billable expense. So here is where we were trying to do, this is the little checkbox that I was talking about. I guess, again, I'm a slide or two early. But this is the bills that we were talking about, is you can uncheck this, you can uncheck that if you need to, for those particular situations that I mentioned before, like that wholesale. So these are bills. You're going to create a bill again. You're going to create a bill the same way. So you're going to go to this new button, or you can come up here in the vendor center. You can do it down here with a little arrow. So it all just depends on what screen you're looking at. But this one in particular, we went to this tab, so we can just kind of add the bill directly from here. You can take it from your email and upload it from your computer. You just little drag and drop type of thing. You can create the bill manually, and you can also just automatically create a recurring bill. So if you have your electric bill and whatnot is constantly the same amount of money, or your rent, those are usually ones that kind of come up. You can just do it so they show up on your list on the 1st or the 15th of every month. You don't have to continue to redo it or happen to forget some. So we would go there. Again, these are also just down here. These are just a list of your open bills. So either something that has been open and they're unpaid, if they're paid, and if you happen to use a bill payment system or something that you need to look for internally, you can set them up so you're able to review and accept them. But from here, we're going to just go to add bill. We'll create a bill. Same screen again, dates, put in your dates, make sure your vendor, any kind of tags. I think I mentioned last time, just make sure if you use tags, use them consistently. Make sure the same spelling, the same uppercase versus lowercase, all of that stuff, just make it consistent, because it does end up being a wicked pain in the butt to have to track them all if you're not. So keep that in mind. Down here with your bill, we're just going to do the same things as we did before. What is it? This particular situation, we're paying these people for our gas and our electric. It's this amount of money. This one happens to not be billable, so we don't have to worry about a customer or anything like that. We can make it recurring from here as well, as we mentioned. So you can go down here, it brings you a little pop-up and tells you how you can tell it how often that you want to do it. If it's a monthly, quarterly, on the 1st and the 15th, etc., you can kind of choose all of that stuff. So once you're done, you're going to hit save, save and new, save and close, and then you're going to get a payment to be able to make payments for these. So it will show up in this list again as unpaid because we put in the new one. So here, and we can do the schedule payment. So we're going to either schedule a payment if you happen to use it through QuickBooks themselves, and they have, it's basically like a bill.com type of thing, but it's for QuickBooks. If you were writing a check yourself, you can just mark as paid, and then it will bring you to the print screen page and all of that. So that's just the difference there. The scheduling it ends up being that you're using some kind of other service, so software. Mark as paid as something that you've already paid for it, or you're going to need to go into the print checks. And again, you can just duplicate it, delete it, view and edit it all from this little section. So as we're here, we just happen to be in the bill. You can mark as paid, as well as we were talking about, because it's going to let us choose which check we're going to pay for it. And print that check. So we're gonna go here as mark as paid. And it brings us to our bill payment screen. If you remember last week, this looks pretty similar to what the received payments on the customer side looks like. So you just want to be able to make sure that this name didn't change. It's still the same bill. You're gonna choose which account you want to pay from. That could be different for every bill. It doesn't have to always be the same. Most people use their business checking account, but you can do however it is for this. Your payment date, you want to make sure it's off for your records. It's the day you sent out the payment, not the day that it went through your bank account. And then any kind of, reference numbers if you happen to have them. And QuickBooks down here will automatically, oops, I forgot, I skipped the amount section. So if you had a specific amount that you were going to put in, so you would do it over here. This would be if you happen to pay the invoice and fill, or if you're only paying 25% of it, any of that will all work. So we could put $10 in here. We could put the $241.23 as we just did. If you put the full amount in, QuickBooks will try to match it up for you. So you have one bill here, it's gonna say, hey, it matches this one, and automatically fill out this information for you. If you had multiple bills that totaled the same amount of money, QuickBooks would do the same thing. It will says, hey, this bill, this bill, this bill, all total that amount. Is that what you want? And you're just gonna make sure that that's true. And that's what you need it to be. The only time that gets into kind of confusion is for people that have the same amount every single month. If you happen to skip a bill for some reason, QuickBooks won't know that. So you're just gonna have to make sure you check it or uncheck it. And then you hit save and close. So now that we've paid that, it will show up in this same screen. It just brings you back to this bill screen. If you needed to find out which bills you've paid because you went, oh crap, I paid this and I want to just see, and I forget the name of that vendor that I just put in the expense for, you can check it out here. So go to your expenses, go to this paid tab, then it's going to show up in this list of all these recent ones that you did. You can sort them either by vendor name, if you knew the vendor, the bill date, the due date, the amount of money, if you happen to not remember what date you put it in for, but you did know that, oh, okay, it was $2,000. You can easily find it that way. Or you can start going in here and start doing the filters of putting in the last 12 months, the last week, and kind of filter from there. So this is just an easy way to glance and kind of figure out which ones have been paid, which ones have not. Did you possibly make a mistake and you have to fix it? And it's kind of easy to find it from here. And it has, the same things. Once you do find it, if you need to delete it or if you need to change it, you can do it from the little arrow. I'm not sure where we're going with this one, to tell you the truth, but this one we're gonna just start. We're probably gonna just go into writing the check. So you're going to just choose again here which one you're going to do from your vendor center, which is just the one with all the list. So now you went in to write the check. You're not paying a bill at this point. You're just writing a check to put into your check register. So you're going to put who it was, which account it came out of. You're going to put the payment date again. If you happen to have already written it or you do not use QuickBooks to print those checks, and you just kind of handwrite them on single checks, you can just put the check number in automatically. You do not always have to have this print later. This is only for print later, so we can show you how to print the checks for people that do a bunch all together. Same information here. If you're just writing the check, you can put meals, utilities, whichever you want, whatever that amount is, billable or not, attach anything you might need, and then you're going to print the check. So you're in this screen, you're already here, this is the only check you need to do. Or if this was the last check, if you had this whole print later and you did a whole bunch of them, you can do that from here as well. So you're going to go into print check. moving a little fast again. So print checks, if you were already set up and you've done this already, you're going to do it, you're going to get this screen. So it's going to have a list for as many that you put that paycheck, that print later check on. This one we only did one, so we're just going to do it from here. It prints it. You can put your starting check number. You always want to make sure that you have that, because QuickBooks is just going to go off of what you put on last time. So again, just easy reconciling, save yourself a whole bunch of time to kind of go back and forth and just put the right check numbers in here and then go ahead and print them. So print preview will bring you up a new screen.
Hey, Crystal, one quick thought back on, can you go back to the other screen? So if they forget to put in the check numbers there, they can go back and edit that in their check register, right? And they say, oh shit, they already hit print.
Yep, absolutely. So you can do it directly from the check register on the dashboard, and go and find that transaction if it happens to be an easy date. You can also go back in here as a vendor if you know who they are and find that expense. In here, you know, it's actually paid. I went back too far. In this paid list, you can go in, that you can see it here as well. Or at least you can see the vendor, that in particular bill, and then you can go to the check from there.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions? Because I was actually about to stop to ask you that anyway after the next screen or two.
That was my own question. There aren't any new yet, but we'll give everybody a chance here when you get to that spot.
Okay. So if you've never set up checks before this, if this is the first time you're doing it, or sometimes you have to go in and if your checks don't line up properly, you're going to see this screen. But this first one is going to take a little bit of time. Sometimes you get really lucky and it's just a matter of changing it just slightly, and then you're good to go. Other times you have to kind of take a piece of paper, match them up, and kind of go a little bit. It doesn't take more than a few minutes to kind of get it all squared away, but you do kind of have to pack your patience some days. So the first time you get in here, you're going to have your check set up. Again, they might line up perfectly. Other times they'll line up way to the bottom or way to the top, and the bank will still cash them, but they just look really weird. So you're going to select which checks you're printing. So do you have a voucher one where it has just the one check and then the descriptions and stuff on the bottom? Or do you have the different ones, which they call standard, that have the 3 different checks and there's no details that are included with it? So you're just going to tell QuickBooks what you're working with. This suggests that blank paper that I actually said. So that's cool that it just tells you that you've got to insert the blank paper, because basically you're going to take a blank piece of paper, you're going to take the check, you're going to hold it up to a window and make sure they line up. And that way you're not wasting a whole ton of checks while you're trying to figure this out. You view and preview sample. If everything matches up and you're good, you're just going to hit yes, I'm finished. If nothing does line up, you're going to hit no and continue setup. And then it's going to bring you a screen where you're able to kind of play with it a little bit further. You're going to be able to you can drag and drop this whole thing here. So that's it does show up exactly like this with this little grid. And you're able to say, all right, my checks came up way down here, like this example says. So you're going to tell QuickBooks it's generally in that area. It will automatically change these for you, as we've noted down here. Then you can do the whole setup all over again. You know, view the print preview to the paper check, make sure they line up. Then once they're done, you're all good to go. If it doesn't line up, you're just going to continue that same cycle. These screens here, we were just showing that what the print preview, when you go to preview it, what it's going to look like. So you're done, you've gone here, you're finally finished, you've got it all mixed up to good to go. You're going to say, yes, I'm finished with setup. Your next screen is going to be your print preview screen. Or if you've already bypassed all that print setup stuff and you go to print check, you're going to get this screen as well. So it's a PDF pop-up. It just shows who the checks are, how many there are, that type of thing. You do want to make sure that when you go to hit print here, that some people have it automatically double-sided. So if you're printing checks and you do double-sided stuff all the time, you want to go into your printer settings and just make sure there's one page. So you don't, just again, so you just so you don't ruin checks and save yourself a little bit of time. But once everything looks okay, they're all the invoices that you want, you're just gonna hit print and it will send it off to your printer. And you said there was no vendor questions?
Well, I have one question, but I think we're going to address it next week. Could we go over how to close out QuickBooks for the year? And I think you do that next week in the live session. Is that correct?
I don't think we go into a lot of detail in regards to that in the live session, but it is definitely something that I have time for.
Okay.
That we could throw in there, and I agree with you, is that's probably the best timing to address something like that.
Okay, I put that on our on my parking lot list for the live session, and was a good time. If anybody else has any questions, you can take yourself off mute or type them into the chat.
Pam, I have a comment. And I have been checking everyone in and I was able to figure everyone's name, except I have one person who is identified as call-in user. So if the person could identify and send me a direct message chat, that would be great. So I can check them off our registration list.
Oh, they're on the phone, so they can't, I don't know that they can change their name on a
Okay.
call-in. Maybe that person can send an email after the fact to let us know they were here.
Thank you.
Hi, I have one quick question.
Go ahead.
I think I might have added the vendor more than once and they're going to two different vendors. Like 1 month I've got like one's like you had mentioned the spellings, like make sure the spellings are the same or it'll get you two vendors. Can you merge them?
Yes, so it's not as simple as a merge, you just get one of these little creative things that just says merge, but you can go in and as you were talking, I was trying to find where the edit was. But if you go into the vendor center and you view and edit it, then you can type one of them to be the exact same spacing, capitalization, and spelling. And once you do that, QuickBooks will give you a little pop-up and say something like this already exists. Would you like to merge them? And you can hit yes from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great question.
It was a very good question. That's it. We can continue on.
That's it for now.
Okay. So we're just gonna touch base a little bit about employees and payroll. Anytime you're doing payroll, it's going to be assuming that you have QuickBooks Payroll Core or, something similar directly through QuickBooks. But there are other aspects of this that you could use as, an employee CRM type of deal if you need to. So you find all of this in this left screen, and it's going to be payroll. It's going to bring you the same type of screen that this before, except for this time it's going to have employees, contractors, workman's comp, which we'll touch base later, but that's just QuickBooks trying to connect you with different insurance companies. But from here, you're going to use this as an employee center, and this is where you can kind of keep track of some of this important information from your employees that you might want to do, even if you're just doing payroll from an ADP, a PHX, Augusto, all of that stuff, and not doing it from QuickBooks. You can still use this. So you're going to have your employee, you can add the new one, or you're going to change some information on the list if they're already there. You're going to do that by hitting edit to change any kind of phone number, addresses, who's their emergency contact type of deal. You can also inactivate them from here if they no longer work for you. And you can also run a report if you were using timesheets or need a list of all your employees and kind of have all their phone numbers, all their email addresses, all their addresses, all in one report. You could do that from here as well. Trisha, do you need something?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I hadn't muted myself again.
Okay, not a problem.
Apologize.
I get so used to looking out of the corner of my eye for the two of you to be unmuted, and it kind of says, Crystal, be quiet. So
I'm glad we have you well trained.
you do. All right, so once you get into that employee, so you get a screen that's similar to this, that you'll have, it scrolls down, so that's why we kind of divided it out for you, but you would just go into the employee and hit edit, or if you were doing a new employee, you'll get this screen. So you just enter all their information, you decide if you want to, how you want to display them, so you could do it by first name, then last name, or last name, then first name. That's where you would do that here. Again, just keep the consistency of it, whichever one you choose. So that way it shows up alphabetically and you know to find somebody. So you're gonna know to go to the E's versus the P's or vice versa. And then you just start putting in all their information that you want to track. So you're going to put in their name, their email address, their phone numbers, any kind of address information that you need, any kind of internal notes that you would like to put in here. The notes are not required, but everything else will be required if you were using QuickBooks Payroll. So as well as this information. So you can put their social security number, it will mask it after you enter it. But you're going to want to make sure that your users, depending on what their access is, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but depending on what their access is, you just want to be careful for confidentiality reasons, for security reasons, of who can see employees and what the information. And unfortunately, QuickBooks just, you can see employees or not, and that's kind of it. So be careful there, just a little side note. Social security number, you could put their hire date, the date that they were terminated or that they left you, what their hourly rate is, their birthdays, any kind of, and then you can also put any kind of reminders as well of, like, if it's their anniversary dates and stuff like that, and you want to celebrate that with your employees, you can do that as well. But you just get, this screen is a little different, and as I said, as you just get this and you'll scroll down a little bit, but it gives you all the information that you would want to track for your employee.
And
Go
if
ahead,
you're
Pam.
not using QuickBooks Payroll, you don't have to put the social security number in there, and you can just manage that through your payroll company, but still have the other information for your reference on hire date, release date, et cetera.
Absolutely, yep. So if you are using QuickBooks at time, you can log in timesheets to make your payroll run easier. You can also use this as for being able to time certain things in order to have them be back billable towards your customer. You know, if you have any kind of billable time in your project and you need to kind of keep track of it, QuickBooks allows you to do that. So this is a single time activity. You would get that from this new thing under payroll, and then it will show. So if you're going to do single one-off timing, you would just want to use time activity. If you were going to track the week and the full week for the full 8 hours that your employee is working, and that they include multiple jobs, you would it's easier to use the weekly activity sheet. But I'll show you both, but we're going to start off with the time activity. So you want to enter the date, you want to enter the employee, you want to enter the customer that they worked on. So make sure, you know, that is, especially if it's a billable item, you know, what did they do? So you're going to use whichever services you have set up. So to know that they did gardening, Freedom Sporting Goods on July 23rd. So this stuff will automatically come up, part of the questionnaire that you deal with in your settings, but you can choose this on an individual basis as well, just like, you know, the previous screens with your vendor bills and your expenses. But you're going to, most of the time, your time activities are not going to be taxable. I would say 99.5%, none of you are going to ever deal with that part, but some of you might deal with the billing part. So you're going to make sure that it is marked here as billable, or uncheck it if it's not. You're to make sure that you have the right hours in here for that client. This will automatically show up if you have a pay rate in the employee. However, sometimes depending on your contracts, that is a little different. So you just want to make sure that they're right. And then here you can make sure that it just has a start time or if you're using both, is all that check mark does. So you're just going to say they started at 12 o'clock gardening, they ended at 4 p.m. They did not take any breaks. And then again, this just gives you another little memo area to say, what did they do? So if they happen to have gardening here and you wanted to go a little bit further and say they cleaned up the trellis for the roses and they composted, this is where you would do that here, just to kind of have a little bit of notes for yourself. So-
Crystal, could I interrupt to just ask a question? And it might be and a different sort of sidebar than this particular category, but you're talking, logging in payroll and HR, and I would probably myself not even have employees. But what I was wondering, having done HR and all, it's referring to this as payroll and HR. Is there a separate system for who you might be using as an independent consultant, or did they just become vendors as a category? In other words, a person who you are utilizing for your business, but strictly as a 1099 IC who will get that form at the end. And I ask because if they are an independent consultant, I would not even want to be referring to them in the system as an employee. You need to stay away from that. Do you understand my question, or am I jumping the gun here?
You're doing a little bit of both, but I do understand where you're going, and it's a great point. Of employees or people that directly work for you that you have on payroll on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. Contractors is what QuickBooks uses, that's what they use for the independent contractors, subcontractors, all those different names that are out there, but QuickBooks uses contractors.
Okay.
You can use that in payroll core as well. The majority of the time you're going to use it on the vendor center, and you're going to hit a little thing that says track for 1099.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question here. Does the description show up to the customer?
No, this is on this screen for employees.
Yes, when you fill that description in there.
In all honesty, I want to say no, but if it does, even if it does, you can choose when you're going to bill it from the invoice. You can automatically delete it before you send to the customer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So that was kind of the summary of the the daily timesheet. This is usually used for some of those one-off projects. It's not necessarily consistent. You don't always have to use it every day. It might only be that you're using something for yourself. If you're a graphic designer and you want to kind of track your time, but for this one particular project, you're going to do that all here, but you don't necessarily do it all day for every single customer, because if you did, I would suggest you kind of use the app to make it easier, or some other kind of time tracking app. But for just one-offs type of thing that you just want to make sure you're added to your customer's bill and not forget it, this is where you would do that. The next screen is where I was talking about the weekly timesheet. This is more what people are going to look for if you are if you are the employer that has employees on payroll for weekly, bi-weekly paid every single Friday. You want to make sure in their hourly work, you want to make sure that they're using something like this. So you'd be able to put their weekly timesheet in, get there same way, the new button under employees, it says weekly timesheet. It's the same information, except for there's just a little bit different boxes and a different look. So because you're doing the whole week together. So up here, the date range, instead of one particular date, it's going to have the date range that you set in your settings when you did payroll. It's going to have the employee name. It's going to have what they did, little kind of their description. You can choose if it's billable here versus on the other screen. So if all their hours for this particular job are going to be billable, you're going to mark them off here. It's going to total whatever you put into this here as billable to the client. So, and it's also going to choose how much dollars that is. So this one happens to be, I forgot that the sample but does it for $4 an hour. That's kind of funny. But so if you happen to be this one for $4 for 4 hours, you're paying this employee for $4 an hour, it's going to give you how much the total is for billable here. This is just more informational for you, just so you know and can kind of make sure everything matches up to what the work that was actually done. So if you're expecting something like $100 for this particular one, and it's billable for only $16, you know that there's an error somewhere. You can continue on as many employees as you need, and for as many dates as you need, and how they all just total up here. If you did have more than the 3 that they give you, you're just gonna add lines. You know, if you needed to delete something, you can delete them over here as well.
And you can put in, like, if you, on Friday, if you spent 4.5 hours at Rodriguez and then another 3 hours at Freeman, you can just line them up so that each one could be recorded for that day, correct?
Yes, so if you were saying like they worked at both of these on Tuesday for 3 hours apiece, you would just put the 3 in here and then the 3 in here, and they would have a total of 6 hours for the day.
Okay. One more question. Is there a QuickBooks app for the employees to sign in on their timesheet?
QuickBooks has apps for everything. So it should be called, I haven't seen it in a while because I don't have a lot of people that use QuickBooks Payroll Core. A lot of this is when you want to do it on your own. But it would be called QuickBooks Time. You would find it in the Play Store or the App Store, and you could do what needs to be done. The one thing you will need to make sure you do in order for your employees to see their timesheets is you're going to have them as a user. You would have them as a report only user. And that way they can, it doesn't go against your user charges in QuickBooks, but they're able to go and log themselves in, enter their own time, and move forward. That answer it?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Anything else?
May I have a question as well? Just want to make sure QuickBook payroll, it's a separate, you need to pay extra for that. It's for this feature.
To use timesheets, no, you do not have to pay separately. But if you wanted to actually process the payroll where the direct deposit to your employees and the taxes are paid, that is a separate service.
And for corporation S, when you not employ yourself, but when you paying yourself a decent amount of money, you can use it as well and just put yourself as the employee, or it would be different?
Nope, there wouldn't be any, I mean, there's something different on regards to the payroll side if necessary, but in regards to just time tracking, you just put yourself in as an employee and then track all your time as well on particular jobs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a question. So is the only way to have the employees use this weekly timesheet through downloading and paying for the app? Or how else would they access this timesheet?
You can give them their own login, so they would log into QuickBooks Online the same way that you do, but they would have their own user that was only strictly for payroll purposes and time entry purposes. So they wouldn't see any of your QuickBooks if your profit and loss said you were losing money or making gazillions amounts of dollars. They wouldn't see any of that. They would only see these 2 screens that we were talking about.
Okay, and I assume if you're going to download the app, that does cost extra.
The app usually does not. That's fine. Because it will just connect again. It's a report user is what QuickBooks calls them. They're just report users. And they do not go against your subscription for QuickBooks. So if you happen to be on Simple Start and you were only allowed 1 user,
Yep.
that would be you, right? You can
Okay.
have 2 accountant users for no charge, and then you can also have the report only users at no charge. So you don't have to have 10 employees and then have to have 11 users in order to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I just went to the App Store and I can confirm that QuickBooks Time is a free app.
QuickBooks Time, okay. And I might be jumping the gun, but are you going to show us how this translates into an invoice?
In regards to the billable invoice,
Yes.
I can go back and find out what page that was on. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Great.
Because Pam, we have time, right?
Oh, yeah, we still have 40 minutes.
Oh, good.
And I did make a note that when we do the live session next week, to just sort of look at how you clarify who has access to what.
Okay, perfect. So.
There you go.
So here, when we were last week, when we were talking customer invoices and if they were billable or if they weren't billable and what it looked like, and it did kind of go over some people's heads, but unfortunately, like it's a really hard way to like for us to squeeze that in there. So you would go back, so you did those timesheets that we were talking about, you're all finished with them, you've entered any kind of expenses that show up as billable on your vendor side. Now you're gonna go bill your customer. You would just go into either sales and invoices or new and invoice. You're going to get this screen. Once you put in the customer name, it's going to say you have these billable expenses, and then you can choose from there if you're going to add them or not. So you can pick and choose if you only wanted to add. If this was a list of 3 or 4, you would add only 2 of them, or you can add all of them. And then the only thing that I would say is that if any of those billable charges do come up here, your client or your customer is not going to know what the heck this $46.98 means. So just automatically have descriptions when you're setting those things up, or make sure you go in there and type a little memo of like 20 hours of gardening, cleaning up your roses. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Anything else while we're here for vendors and timesheets?
I think we got all of them.
Oh, look how silly that is, as I went backwards and we already addressed this question and I forgot all about it.
Oh, there's the
Sorry,
employee
guys.
one.
Yeah, but so to answer your question, I just did, it's the same screen. Once you hit in the thing, it's going to show up billable for the time, and it will, the answer is it is going to show this weekly guidance in your description in there. If it doesn't, if you happen to write something in there that you didn't want the client to see for whatever reason, because you just went down into like the nitty-gritty details that the client doesn't need to see, you can always just delete them in the description as it comes over. We're still good, Pam, right? No more questions?
Yep.
Continue on. Perfect. Okay. So we already addressed that. This will address the other question that came up when I said you can either pay contractors here through the payroll section, or you could do it for the vendor section. That is your choice. The only time people really do use the contractor section in payroll is if you are using payroll core and you are actually cutting them checks through payroll. Other times you're just going to have them as a vendor. And as I said, there's a little checkbox that when you're in edit, we can go, if I don't address that already, we can go back and I'll show you. But you're just going to track them 1099s from there. But let's just assume that you are paying your contractors through payroll, and you need to still still need to prepare for your 1099s at the end of the year. This is where you would do it. So you've got contractors under payroll. You're going to add them as you needed. You're going to pay them when their time comes. It gives you the options here of what these are. How did you pay them? What did you do? And then it gives you the list of who they are and whatnot. That's actually interesting because I don't remember that from last year, that you can actually put your W-9s information in there and it will already tell you that it's ready. So you don't have to chase after your W-9s. You know who you have and don't have, so that's pretty cool. But once you pay them, you get this information. How did you pay them? Was it through paper check, through payroll, etc.? You just kind of have this screen. If you were done and everything at the end of the year, you're going to hit prepare 1099s and you'll get a screen like this. This is giving you the option to pull these all through. You can do the 1099 filings directly through QuickBooks if you would like. So that way you don't have to worry about electronic filings and all of that stuff. They do it for you. You will pay them for an extra fee, although it's not crazy expensive. I just don't remember what it is. But just remember that there is an extra fee if you have per form, if you have QuickBooks do it for you. But you're gonna get it ready. So you're gonna hit that prepare 1099 form. You're gonna get, let's get started because you're already ready. And then it's going to just say, here, review your information. And if anything is missing, you're going to get this red box for like, you know, it happens in other things, but it's gonna get this red box and say something's wrong. And then it will highlight them for you to say what you need to do. So in this particular situation, Craig's Design and Landscaping does not have his phone number and his tax ID in his settings, so they're looking to do it here. You wanna just edit it, put it in, you can move on to the next screen. It doesn't, we don't show you, but then it will go and it will say which accounts in your chart of accounts apply for 1099. You can pick and choose those. It gives you a list of contractors that will show up. You can pick and choose those because anybody that's an S corp obviously does not have to be paid as giving a 1099. So you're gonna choose the correct ones. You're gonna look at your thing and then you're gonna send it off to QuickBooks and file. Once you hit file, it will tell you your pricing and it will ask you for your information, or if you want to put the credit card on file, I believe it allows you to do that as well.
I did a quick search for that to see what it would cost.
Oh,
And
good.
they say they want a monthly fee for it. So they want you to sign up for the whole year, not just to file them at the end of the year.
How much is their monthly fee now? Because I haven't heard that before.
Well, when I look at this screen, it shows me to make contractor payments and file the 1099s, it's $15 a month, $7.50 with the 50% off. Includes up to 20 contractors and an additional $2 for each additional contractor over the 20.
Okay, so that's good information for everybody to know. I personally think that's very silly that they're asking you for $15 a month. However, I do wonder is if that you individually, if you guys are looking for it, you might want to look into, is it something that you can sign up for in December and January and then you can't close down? Because I know that like Avalara and Tax 1099 and Track 1099 all kind of have those same subscription things, but you can shut them off once you're done. I wonder if QuickBooks might be the same way now. But it's something to look into, you know, if you don't do it. If not, you can go directly to the IRS's website and go do them yourselves or use any kind of other software. But if it does make it convenient for people.
All right, someone just commented that they just went through this with QuickBooks. The monthly fee is $15 per month. This gives you access to the files when the 1099 is done. You can pay $4 each when they email the 1099, but you do not get a file for your records.
Okay. Good information. So basically everybody needs to determine if you do go through QuickBooks, which subscription you're going to do in regards. You do want files for yourself. So being able to that $4 per email type of thing, it might be tempting, but you definitely want to be able to access those forms however you do it. So just keep that in mind as well. The next screen is Workman's Comp. This is just QuickBooks has paired up with various, you know, companies throughout the country, and to make it easier on people to know how to get started on their Workman's Comp and all of that. A lot of this insurance comes through Next Insurance, which I believe is throughout the country, possibly not in Texas and in Alaska or something like that. I think there's 2 states, but obviously it's not Massachusetts. We're covered here, so it doesn't matter to most of you. But if you were not able to get a Workman's Comp insurance through your local insurance agents and stuff, you could try from here to kind of get a quote, work through that. They're trying to just give you avenues to know where to look for things. The same thing with their capital on the other side is that they have their own lending that to small businesses. You do have to do the whole federal guidelines and whatnot, but again, it just kind of gives you these things of them being, they're trying to be a one-stop shop for small business owners. Just be careful what you're getting into, just like everything else. Just read the fine lines. Some people it works perfectly fine and there's no problems. Other people, as they're growing, it's just not the right fit for you and you're better off going to a local one. So again, just read the fine print and make sure it fits your business. Okay, banking. This is where all the questions are gonna come from. It's always where it is. So I have to say that before we get started, when you are setting up your QuickBooks file, it is very, very tempting to set up your banking in the very beginning. QuickBooks actually tries to guide you through that in the beginning. I would say that is really more step 4 and step 5. When you're setting up QuickBooks, get your chart of accounts in there, get your products in there, get your customers and your vendors, and then figure out what has turned in from your, especially if you're changing from a desktop file to a QuickBooks file, go look at all of that and see where are the dates that they cut off, because it is going to duplicate things, especially if you just add. So it's going to cause you some trouble. So just make sure you're systematic as you're doing this. Don't just have your bank import all the transactions and just blindly hit add, because you may make errors. If you're obviously starting brand new, then that's a different story. But if you are converting, just be careful here. So that being said, you're gonna you're gonna set them up. They're gonna match. They're going to download into QuickBooks for you. They will do it on a 24-hour cycle. When that 24 hours starts depends on your bank and QuickBooks, but normally it's in the morning. Before you get into the bank register, you are going to have a screen that looks like this. This is going to be all the transactions that were imported into QuickBooks from your bank that does not have an automatic rule set for them. So you have to review these. This is part of the reconciliation, but this is not reconciling your bank. So this is just making sure that all transactions are being categorized properly. So you will see here the list of your transactions, what they are. You can review them or assign a category directly from here. You can, it's not showing a little batch thing, but once you start, if you did all these A rentals, you can click on all of them. It gives you a little thing of what to do, and then it will say accept them, update them, and exclude them if you wanted to. So you can do them in groups. You don't have to do them all individually. It will also show on some things that if there's something already there, because we've gone through all the expenses for our credit cards that we've discussed, we entered our bills properly, it's going to say you've already recorded this. I think this matches with something. So you just want to pay attention here as well. Make sure it really is the right one, please. You know, because in situations like this, sometimes that $75 is in there multiple times, and you just want to make sure you're accounting for the right one. So you've got these here, you've accepted them, or you just need to look for something particular in your check register and you're going to deal with this at a later date. You're going to pick your bank register up here. You know, this is going to show you all, you know, your checking account, what's gone in, what's gone out, what they've done. Hopefully your ending balance is going to match with the bank balances, so you're all up to speed. You can do this, you know, I showed you with undeposited funds previously, but you can do this to any bank account that is in there or any other asset that's in your chart of accounts. So if you have a savings account, you have a credit card, you do any kind of prepaid deposits as an asset, if you get going down that road, you can choose all of them and you'll see the same register here. So this register that we're talking about, again, looks the same for your credit cards and your checking account, your savings account. It's all just the transactions that are in there are different. This is going to show you everything that's come through and everything that you've accepted. So this list that I showed you before is not included in this check register until you hit add accept. And it's going to show you what is it. So this one happens to be a deposit that we were going to do at the end of the year. This one was an expense that came through at the beginning of the month. These were credit cards that came through. Does it make sense on your check? Oh, if you paid your credit card, then that probably would make sense on your checking account. If you are recording any kind of cash purchases, you can add those as well, but they're all kind of listed here. Who it went to and what it was for is here, any kind of memos and your amounts. Pam, before I get into reconciliations, what did I miss?
can you go back to that other screen for a minute? So talk about the check mark column with the Cs, the Rs, the green things.
Okay, so if it has a C, that means it's gone through your bank account. So basically anything it's seen with green or that you've done here with your, you've given it a category and then hit confirm and add. That's what that C means. It's cleared your checking account. The green little bar is the same thing as basically, it's just telling you, these green squares are just telling you it came from an automatic download. If there is nothing there, it is because it has not cleared or you have not marked it as cleared in QuickBooks from your checking account. And if it has an R, which we don't show here, it will show that it's been reconciled, which is going to be our next step.
And the reason that it doesn't have anything in there on top of, so those were things that you put in as an expense or a transaction or a check. It just hasn't recognized that it came from the checking account yet, from the bank yet.
Yes, so if you put some stuff in beforehand and it's still pending in your checking account, it's not going to have a C or that little green thing. If you had a check that you wrote last month, but the person hasn't received it and gone to the bank and actually cashed it, you do want it in your QuickBooks check register because you sent that out and eventually they're going to cash it. But it's not going to have the C or the R because it hasn't hit your bank account yet.
Great, thank you.
I have a question, please.
Okay.
I have a question about when you mentioned the cash purchase. I see that doesn't come up, in your checking register, but how, I don't understand how you're recording it there and how it's going to help you.
So this one's a little generic, because we're just it tries to show in the sample company, we try to make it that all your different options are there. So in regards to a cash purchase, you could use that for something. It wouldn't really be $23.50. It would be something that if you took $900 out of your bank in cash in order to pay for expenses in cash, you can record them that way as a cash purchase for $900, and then how you're dividing it up of if it's materials, if it's services, etc. You can also have a check register that has for cash only purposes, and that's where it could make sense. So it just depends on what you're doing, what your business needs, and what kind of transaction setups you have.
I'm going to make a note to show the cash account in the chart of accounts when we go to the live session.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I also have a question.
Okay.
I'm wondering, so like, say someone bought something for you, they gave you the receipt, and you want to, claim it as, how would you do that? Like, so I want it to come out of my bank account, right? My original, like just my bank account. Like, would I attach that receipt as a expense to my just bank account?
There are a couple ways around it. The way that you should be doing it is through a journal entry, and you would offset it by most likely having it be like an owner's draw type of thing, and then it goes. So in this particular circumstances, we're dealing with a lot of soil and plants and some of these things. So you would have owner's draw, and then you would have it for so much money in plants. You could do something that would say like, received from customer or received from other people, type of deal. So you could do that. You definitely do not want it to be, if it was $100 in purchases, you don't want to put it in your checking account because it's never going to, that $100 was never taken out of your checking account. So that's not how you would want to use it. It would be more like a journal entry or offsetting an expense the way I described. So the expense itself would be zero.
Oh boy. Okay, thank you.
We can go, it's not super complicated. Pam, are you writing that down too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like how to handle reimbursements and cash transactions.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Because they're pretty similar, your question and the question before. So we could do that in a minute or so and address it next week.
All right, here's another question. What happens to prior year expenses if you eliminate a category in the chart of accounts?
Nothing, it just gets inactivated. So if you're in it, correct? Is that what they're asking?
Yep.
So if you inactivate a category or you merge a category or you inactivate a product, all that information that's from previous years, previous periods, whatever, is all there. It is just not going to show up anymore to put onto your future bills, invoices, and all of that stuff because you've inactivated it.
Thank you.
Good?
Yep.
All right, so we've kind of we've described what your check register looks like if you're going to reconcile it. This is where a lot of people think that just because they've gone into QuickBooks on this side, they've reconciled their bank accounts. That is not true. You need to reconcile your bank accounts to the actual bank statements because it is just technology. So there is issues where the glitch can happen. Doesn't talk to your bank for a couple days and it misses some transactions and whatnot. You want your information to be right because you want to be at work making business decisions based on real data of how much money do you really have. So in order to do that, you don't have to do it every month, but I suggest you do it on a monthly basis to kind of keep everything all squared away and not get overwhelmed with a year's worth of stuff all at once. But you're going to hit reconcile. Once you have your bank statements, and you've imported everything that was in this list here, you're going to hit reconcile. It's going to give you a screen, and it's going to say which account do you want to do, whichever one that you're looking at the bank statement. Your beginning balance should match what's on your bank statement. If it doesn't, it will give you a little pop-up-y thing that says, hey, we can help you try to find this. Your beginning balance doesn't match, but most of the time, if you're reconciling every single month, you're going to have a beginning balance that matches your statement. You're going to hand enter what your ending balance is, and you're going to enter what the date is. So then you're going to hit start reconciling. QuickBooks is going to do a lot of this work for you. If you are consistently doing it, the easier it's going to be, because then QuickBooks is going to know all this stuff is right. It's not going to click anything that's out of order. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that. So it's going to automatically say, I've cleared all these transactions through these various downloads. I believe that your information, all these are what you're talking about, and you're good to go. Sometimes it will take things that are out of the data range. So if you do have a problem like this one, where it says that there's a difference of the information that you put in, so it's going to say your beginning balance, we're going to kind of back up a little bit. So you're going to do your beginning balance that you've entered in the previous screen. This is the ending balance that you put in the previous screen. These are the totals of the payments and the deposit that QuickBooks has cleared for you. So all these ones that are checked, these are what the totals are. And then it's going to say this is the difference between those totals of things, what your beginning balance is, and this is the difference. So then you have to go back in and find what this difference is. A lot of the times it's just looking at your bank statement and saying, okay, here's the paper, $300, $175. You just go down the list. Oh, okay, I realized the 108's missing, the 62, this thing. And then as you continue to check them, this balance changes. You want it to be green and you want it to be 0 by the time you are done. Sometimes if you have a long list, kind of a little bit of a insider knowledge or kind of make it quicker for you, look at these two here versus your bank statement. A lot of the times one will be 100% right and the other one will not be. So if your payments are right and they match your bank statement, you know that it's not a payment issue. It is a deposit issue that you're missing. And then it kind of gives you that screen to be able to look for, okay, I know I'm missing a deposit for $5,000 and you look for there. Once everything is found and you're good to go, you are going to be the green check mark and the 0 that I said. Everything is all good. It matches. We're all fine. You're going to hit finish and now. Once the option you can get, it's going to say, hey, you reconciled it, view the reconciliation reports or not. You can hit that you're done, if you want to. I do suggest you keep a file of your reconciliation reports, even if it's just on your computer. You don't have to necessarily print it, but keeping it on your computer, knowing that it's March's bank rec, sometimes gives you information that if later date something is really, really wrong, you know that as of March 31st, everything was correct. These were what was there, and you're good to go. Bring in all the questions because there's going to be a lot of them.
All right, go back to that other page. So one thing I'm gonna note, the one with the greens on it. All right, so I'm gonna say that it is really exciting when you go in and this screen comes up right away and you say the difference is 0 and it's green. And I have clients all the time that keep up on their information and it comes that way when they hit reconcile. The question that I have from somebody is, can you show how to enter the beginning balance in the live session? The first,
Yes.
okay,
To change it, like if there's an error, is that what the question's in regards to? Like if there's an issue?
it just, Cheryl, can you share a little bit more on your question? All right, it just says about when you entering the beginning balance, but the only time you enter the beginning balance is in the first session, in the first time you use it, right?
Yes. So the first time there'll be issues that come up if there's errors in the beginning balance. And we can definitely go over that in a live session when we start showing reconciliations in live.
Okay,
I can go in beforehand and kind of make it so it shows up wrong, so we can kind of go through there. Because a lot of people are gonna actually run into that. So it's a very valid point.
okay, so I made a note to address errors in beginning balance.
Cheryl did clarify her question that either beginning balance or change or the actual beginning balance would be helpful.
Okay. So anything that, because sometimes what happens is that you delete items. You know, if you delete a payment or you void the payment and it messes up your previous reconciliation, your beginning balance will be off. And that will be where that little square comes in. So we can go over that quickly.
Okay. Next question, if you use QuickBooks Time feature, how do you get notified to issue a payment?
How do you get notified?
Do you mean when you use I'm going to clarify this question. When you use QuickBooks Time, when you need to bill a customer, do you mean, or pay your employees? Pay employees.
So that is going to be in your payroll notifications. That's not from your timesheets themselves. The timesheets are more for you to track how much time your employee worked and if they're on a particular job that needs to be billed or not. When you're doing payroll, you're going to know that payroll is every Friday, so I have to enter it every Wednesday, you know, by Wednesday morning in order to make it everything on time. So you're going to kind of know that as your own business owner. But if it was due or not due, when you go to payroll and then you go to run payroll, it's going to have a thing on the top that tells you, you know, you need to enter by this date or it's due by this date. So it's not an automatic notification as much as it is in that screen and tells you you're behind or not.
Okay, and if you use QuickBooks Time to track your employees' time, but you use a third-party payroll company, then you would pull that report to get their hours to transfer to the payroll company, right?
Yes. Again, you know, basically the timesheets are more for internal purposes for you to make sure that you're tracking job profitability correctly, for you to make sure that you've got people's times, and versus for you as a business owner being able to control who did what timing and whatnot versus having to call Jane and then Joe and then Jake and then all of that stuff. So that all those timesheets are more internal for you to gather the information that you need.
Okay, one more question. Clarification, QuickBooks doesn't keep reconciliation reports we need to save ourselves?
QuickBooks does keep the reconciliation reports in line for you. I believe, but there are times where there's errors in QuickBooks. It happens a heck of a lot less in online than it does in desktop. But something can always be corrupted, and stuff like that. So I like to keep these reconciliation reports on a hard drive, or, just in kind of in a folder. So I know, hey, there's a problem. I can't get at this, but as of this date, it looked like that. Or somebody comes back to you and says, hey, I can't, that check never cleared and something's wrong with your QuickBooks. You have that file to at least go back and kind of look to see when it did clear.
Thank you. I got a thumbs up on that one. And how long should they keep them? I'm assuming that it would be until they do their taxes and close out the year.
Yes. I mean, I would basically say keep them as long as you're keeping your bank statements and your taxes. So if you throw away your taxes at the end of 3 years, because it basically seems to be when the audit kind of thing goes away, I would keep them with all your tax stuff for those 3 years. If you're keeping them for 7, I'd keep them for that long as well. There's no harm in getting rid of them. After a couple years, they're really small files on your hard drive, so it's not like you're really going to take up a whole ton of space. So it's just a matter of what your internal processes is, and like Pam said, is taxes is a good way to, compare.
And then I have another question. Are there services for someone to sit down and go through and fix things with you? And I would say yes. If you are on the Lower and Outer Cape and you have some, things that you need to learn and fix, I certainly can spend some time with you in an individual session so you can learn more about that. If you're not in our region, you can hire someone like Crystal to be able to help you fix things.
If you already know, can I just add on to that? If you already know what you're doing as well, and you know where those issues are, score. A lot of score mentors will know. I mean, a lot of them will send you to me anyway, but score is a good resource for that too, if you're out of Pam's area.
Okay, that was my last question.
Yeah, I have a question, please.
Yes.
Okay, on the page that's previous to this one, where you do have a difference. I noticed that, Crystal, you were trying to tell us how to figure out which ones were not checked. And what I don't understand is you have to go back to a previous screen, and in order to, if you find out which one it is, you can't just check it there to suddenly put it in correctly, right? I mean, how do you do that? I don't know if you understand my question.
This is going to be, we're going to address this again in the live session because there is so much there. So I think your questions are going to definitely be clarified there.
Oh, great, thank you.
With that being said, you can clear the statement date so it shows all your transactions. So if there was something that was cleared down here, you'll see it. If you knew that this one particular here for fuel was wrong, and it should have been $554 for whatever reason, it does, the check ends up blue and you can click on it and go in and change it and then close it out. But it's definitely better for next week when we show all of this stuff live, is going to answer a lot of questions.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I don't know where we are. How many more slides do you have? We got about 5 minutes left.
I was just looking at that too. I would like to just kind of touch base on some of these apps. We can go through searching expenses and whatever pretty quick beforehand, but let's just talk about receipts and what a sales channel is, and then we can end there.
Perfect.
Okay, so moving on, a sales channel is within QuickBooks is other POS systems that you have information in. So they have, good thing, eBay, Shopify, your Etsy account that can link up to it, Square, Stripe for some people. This is where you would do that. Again, we're going to talk next week now a little bit more about products and services, but you're going to have to determine yourselves if you have a sales channel such as Etsy or Shopify, if you're keeping all your products and stuff in there, you do not have to go as detailed into QuickBooks of where it is. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. But these sales channels are just the other POSs that are out there that you're using as e-commerce. And then receipts. So you can I have a lot of people that end up with a lot of paper receipts and they don't know what to do with them, and then there's a whole bunch of them, and then they get all overwhelmed of where they're going and stuff like that. So QuickBooks, because of that, has created this receipt file. So you can scan everything in, you can do it in an app, you can upload it from your computer, you can have it forwarded by email to an email, and it's going to show a whole bunch of them down here, similar to the expense transactions and bills that we showed before. This will give you the opportunity to match it to a credit card transaction or a bank transaction. So therefore, when you have that $54 for fuel and you've got a receipt, you can actually attach it to show that transaction really was a business expense, and then therefore you can throw the paper away because you've got a just a file, you've got it on file in QuickBooks. So again, this is just a drag and drop from your computer. If you wanted to do it, you can set aside a Google Drive and you can tell QuickBooks where to find it by giving it access to your Google account and telling it which folder it's supposed to look at, and the same thing for the email. So if you were scanning it, you can send it to an email and it will just show up here. So just having that ability is helpful to a lot of people, especially if you have outside bookkeeping and stuff being done as well. Keep that in mind. If you might want to set up this receipts, because therefore it saves your accounting people, whoever they may be, your CPA, your accounting team, an outside bookkeeper, if they're able to see those receipts to match those transactions, then there's a lot less questions that are going your way.
And
I
can
think
I
we'll
just add
end there.
one more thing? If you get a statement from somebody, don't upload that there, in my opinion. Do you agree? Because it can't really match up in the same way and it gets confusing.
Yeah, I would just make sure that when you're using that, it's stuff that's pretty clear. Like, you want the computer to be able to read it and to know what to do with it. So if you think by a statement, like you said, if it has 4 or 5 lines and you did not pay all of those things on the statement all at the same time, I would skip it.
Okay.
We do have a question, Crystal. It's will you be covering interface with little green light software?
I'm not going to, because we didn't really plan on that, but we can, depending on how far we go for the live channel, on the third, the next class, we might have time to kind of explain it. I don't have any screens to share with you, but we could discuss it and kind of go over it from there.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I made a note.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
I don't have any other questions, so we'll hang on for a couple. Oh, so the one question is, will that be different than today's? Yes. So we have created slides for this, what we've been doing, because then we don't have to type in the information for you for each individual thing that we're doing. Next week, Crystal's going to use the actual QuickBooks software to be able to show you how some of these things happen.
Yes. And just to say, in previous classes that we've done, it's probably the first 15-20 minutes. I'll go over a little bit of product list, a little bit of chart of accounts, some of that miscellaneous stuff that we missed today. And then the rest of the workshop is for you guys. I will go over, banking and kind of have a list of myself of where most people's questions are. But it will be more of an interactive, everybody can raise their hands type of thing, and we can kind of address it as best we can through the sample company live.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for participating today. I also want to thank everybody that's shared your experiences and knowledge that you have on the product, because things change all the time and people have different experience. So it's always good to hear from everybody. And we also like having everybody's questions, because if you have the question, likely somebody else does too.
And thank you for your patience with the link snafu. I'll make sure that the correct link is shared next week.
All right. Thank you everybody again, and we'll see you next time, which is next Thursday at 9:30. Have a good week.
Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome, Heather. I got you on the list for that.
Okay, and so last week I missed it completely. So I'm
Okay.
gonna,
I'll send both.
I'm pretty confident I use QuickBooks that I can power through it, the recorder, but it's really helpful.
Okay,
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Pam, we're still recording.
oh, thank you. Yeah, how do I stop that?